Morning, Adam.
Morning.
Barely
Hi.
3 days on. You must be exhausted. Has it sunk in yet?
Shattered, jet-lagged, talked about nothing else, I think, since the early hours of Sunday morning, where we were with Anthony Joshua actually late into the night in Madison Square Garden. Yeah, I mean, a huge, dramatic upset. Probably, in all the time I've been covering fights in Sky Sports, the biggest. Not as big as Buster Douglas's win over Mike Tyson. I think Mike Tyson was seen as totally invincible there. There's been one or two fragile moments for Anthony Joshua through his career, especially when he was a couple of punches away from losing to Vladimir Klitschko, but he battled back and won that and kept his unbeaten record intact. But I think the manner of this, you know, everybody expected him to deal with Andy Ruiz Jr, the late replacement for Jarrell Miller. Maybe all of us were guilty of underestimating what Ruiz could do, but we knew he had fast hands. We knew he was a Mexican warrior. And I think, you know, Anthony didn't quite get it right from the opening bell. He was on the back foot. But then when he knocked him down in the third round, he thought, you know, it's going to be another AJ knockout and no worries there. But, you know, he tried to engage. He got caught. I don't know if he ever recovered from the left hook that disorientated him in the third round. And, you know, it was very vulnerable, and the way his legs just sort of betrayed him for the rest of the fight was worrying. And mentally and physically, I just think he sort of felt done at the end. Yes, it was a huge upset, but, you know, massive congratulations to Andy Ruiz Jr. You know, all the talk has been about Joshua. The headlines have been about, you know, he loses for the first time. What went wrong? What happened? Was he complacent? Was he looking past Andy Ruiz Jr? Was he right? All of that. Let's not forget that there's a Californian Mexican in there who has lived his own dream. You know, he took the fight at 5.5 weeks' notice. He got the golden ticket, he grabbed hold of it, and he cashed it in. And it's an amazing moment. You know, Oliver McCall knocked out Lennox Lewis. Hasim Rahman did the same thing again. Two big shocks. Danny Williams beat up Mike Tyson late on in his career. So there have been other heavyweight moments, but let's have a chance just to reflect on Andy Ruiz. He's a great guy. He's a great family man. He came in, he said he was going to do it, and he did, and very few believed he would. So it was an amazing achievement for him, and obviously a nightmare for Joshua.
So you mentioned some of those huge shocks that we've seen in the history of boxing. Where are you ranking this one?
It's right up there. Certainly at ringside, it's probably the biggest shock I've ever seen. Matthew Macklin and Paulie Malignaggi, who are alongside me, said exactly the same thing. We all remember where we were when Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson in Tokyo. And that was just, you couldn't believe that. But being at ringside, you couldn't really believe what was happening on Saturday night. Anthony Joshua was expected just to deal with Ruiz emphatically. You know, was he possibly looking past him into the Deontay Wilder-Tyson Fury mix? Deontay Wilder had announced that he was fighting Luis Ortiz in September that week. Did that just shake AJ a little bit? There's been talk about, was he right in the dressing room? He was a little bit late coming out. What about beforehand in the ring? He was getting massage around the neck. The gum shield was a bit loose. So there's moments, but I think ultimately he lost the fight because Andy Ruiz just had a game plan, body shots, head shots, and Joshua didn't utilize his jab, his physical advantages. He never threw an uppercut. His own body shots, which I'd seen him throw in sparring in Sheffield, and he looked in great shape through camp, and he just didn't do that. And I think when he got hurt in the third round, it was almost a case of survival. He said to Rob McCracken in the corner at the end of the sixth round, "Why am I feeling like this?" You know, is it because the big muscles were tired and he just couldn't get enough into them? I don't know. It was a terrible night for him.
Let's have a quick look at that, in fact, because Joshua's trainer, Rob McCracken, was forced to remind him of his tactics between rounds. Let's listen in.
Keep the hands up when you're boxing. Don't come down.
What shot was it?
He caught you with a hook because you loaded up, all right? So let's just keep the hands up. Listen, you're back in the game. Jab, jab, right hand. Calm. You'll break him down. You can do this.
And you can see there, he's clearly suffering after those knockdowns. You mentioned that perhaps he wasn't quite right coming into this fight. What more can you tell us about that?
No. I just think that, you know, I think that there's going to be a lot of conspiracy theories. You know, I've heard all sorts of things that, you know, there was stuff in the dressing room beforehand that you know, the ring walk wasn't quite as it normally is. But, you know, he was in Madison Square Garden. He had a short ring walk. It was very different to the experiences at Wembley and at Cardiff. And, you know, I don't think there's anything question of him freezing or anything. I mean, he's fought in front of 80, 90,000 people. You know, look at him. He looks the same old Anthony Joshua to me there. And I just think, you know, he possibly looked past Ruiz. That's possible, that he was thinking about the bigger prizes out there. He was training for Jarrell Miller. You know, he had 5.5 weeks to change for Andy Ruiz Jr. And maybe, as I said, we all underestimated Andy Ruiz. We've seen him before. You know, he's put in good performances against Joseph Parker, but he lost out in New Zealand. And obviously Joshua had no problems with Parker. So I think that was what the big upset was all about, the fact that he just was expected to defend his titles in style. I think most of us thought it would be pretty emphatic, that he'd have to back Ruiz up and maybe weather a couple of shaky moments early on. But you know, when he had him down in the third round and it looked like he was right on top, he let him straight back in, he got caught, and then it was a case of, you know, he just didn't look right, he didn't look himself. And, you know, I think that they've got to take a long look at what went wrong. Is it his training? Is it just something that happened in the fight? Is it just that he got beaten by the better guy on the night? I mean, he was full of respect at the end. You know, he was humble, as he always is, and that was great to see. He was very, very classy in defeat, as I always thought he would be when he did eventually lose. I just didn't think he'd lose on Saturday night like everybody else out there.
And you mentioned, of course, all roads seem to be leading towards those potential super fights. Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. The Ball family back in their courts now. I mean, how far has this set him back? Hugely,
massively. You know, the bubbles burst, the unbeaten record's gone. Now, look, Deontay Wilder didn't have a great in 2018. He had an up-and-down war with Luis Ortiz, which was dramatic, but it wasn't his best performance. And then most of us thought he'd lost to Tyson Fury. He came back with a highlight reel knockout over Dominic Breazeale, and I think Joshua probably had a bit of pressure to do something similar. But yeah, now Wilder's going to fight Ortiz and maybe Fury in a rematch, and Joshua has got to exercise this rematch, so he's got 30 days to do that. And the big question is, well, will he? Yes, I think he will. Will it be in the UK? I expect so. But will the same thing happen again? Andy Ruiz will fancy his chances again. The odds will be much closer this time. I mean, it was ridiculous. I think Joshua was 20, 25 to 1 on in some places. It was crazy odds, you know. It's heavyweight boxing, anything can happen. But what's he going to do? Is he going to look at his training regime, his outfit in Sheffield? Is he going to think about altering something? Or is he just going to go again? And, you know, it's down to him, really. I mean, psychologically, how's he feeling now? You know, on the night he was, you know, very sort of respectful of Andy and sort of, I'm coming again, whatever. But it must sink in over the coming days. And, you know, Lennox Lewis has come out and said a few things, and he went through a similar situation, especially. A lot of people talk about the Hasim Rahman knockout, but the Oliver McCall knockout was Lewis's first defeat. He'd had a 24 fight, same sort of fights as Joshua. And what he did was he sacked his trainer, he hired Emmanuel Stewart, who was the sort of master at the time, and he changed his style, and he went back into utilising the physical attributes that he's always had, the long jab, and he became more negative. But he then took a couple of years to get back Oliver McCall back in a ring, exacted revenge, and you know, he became an all-time great, Lennox Lewis, and so he did something dramatic. Now, does AJ need to do that? He's got a very close relationship with Robert McCracken. He's a wonderful trainer. He's got a great setup in Sheffield, people all around him, a lot of people around him. Does he have to look at that and think, do I need to bring something else in? Do I need to change something? Or is he going to go again and blame himself and just congratulate Andy Ruiz on the win and try and, you know, get the revenge maybe later in the year?
Sort of him bringing in even more people to those 23 or 24. An extraordinary one, Adam. Thank you for joining us.
I don't think I'll bring more into the 23. I think he's got to look at those 23. Probably.
Quite right. Appreciate your time.
No problem.